Hi guys, it's me again, and I'm here taking over the channel one more time and gonna ask my wonderful husband some questions that I have, or some of my friends have, based on what I know of him, but also based on all the video. And today I have very specific, targeted questions for you.
What's that?
So, my question comes from the fact that, so you love history, you love biography, you love studying what happened in the past. And I am the total opposite. I love studying new technology, knowing, like, trying to, not predict the future, but like learning about how can the future look moving forward. Which one do you think is more useful and why? And when I ask more useful, I mean in terms of, I would say, personal growth, business, career, that kind of environment.
This is a very interesting question. So, just to add on,
let's have a debate.
So just to add to what Lucy said, Lucy is really does. I think there's this term that people come up with called a futurist. It's a trendy term, but really she's the closest thing I've seen to that. I've known people that are like that. There are certain people who are natural historians. They're naturally interested in the past. I'm one of those people. It's not my main interest. I mean, I don't know. I have a lot of interest, but I have a natural. Since I was a child, I would ask my people around me about history. About, I was always asking about that. So there are people like that, and there are other people who, like yourself, who are naturally just. It's an archetype. It's a true thing. There's a certain kind of personality that just likes to know about the future. Now, sorry, my eyes are dry because of this damn finasteride. But the point is. Okay, my opinion. So, I think that if a person is destined to greatness, then they may be better off with the archetype that likes the future. But if a person is destined to mediocrity, they would benefit more from studying the past. And
why would you say that?
Because the people that are able to take advantage, and when I'm talking about greatness, I'm not talking about Napoleon. I'm talking about being the most productive person in your town, if you live in a small town, or out of 100 people or 200 people, being the most productive person out of 100 people or 200. If you're one of those people, then being into the future will allow you to see opportunities of how the world changes and to go into those opportunities and either make money or make influence or impact people. So, for example, let's talk about money, although this isn't the most interesting thing, but let's talk about money. So in the US, there was a time where railroads dominated the industry of the US. So there's a Vanderbilt family was built on this. They became extremely wealthy. And there were people that were obsessed with railroads. There were people who didn't like railroads. They were still doing the horses and stuff like that, and they didn't get involved in that. And they were doing other kind of businesses, and they missed this huge boom of what would today be billionaires that developed out of the railroad fortunes. In the later 1800s and early 1900s, the same thing happened with oil. So there were people who, the new thing was oil. I mean, there was also electricity, there were cars, but there were different booms. And people who were interested in what's going on in the future, with the oil, for example, the Rockefellers came out. So being ahead of time. So then you have computers. You have the people that were very into computers. These are all technology, by the way. This is all technology. So railroads are also technology. So then with the computers, you have the Bill Gateses and the Steve Jobs and these kind of people. Steve Jobs being both a futurist and a person that can take advantage of people, like Steve Wozniak, and use them and abuse them and throw them away. It's a real interesting character. But people who do that are, and these are the biggest ones. But there are other people like. So you can see how technology changes, and you can see how to make a small business out of it. Like you always have. She always, by the way, she has business ideas. Like I've never seen anyone that has that many business ideas. So she constantly gets ideas, and that's because you're constantly thinking of how the world is changing. How you tell me market disruption and things like that. How the market is going to change, and you see the opportunities come. But if you're somebody that is, what I mean by mediocre in terms of productivity, what I mean is somebody that goes to work 9 to 5, does what he needs to do, and is not trying to go up through, or what she needs to do, and not trying to go up through the thing, then you're best to read history and best to look to the past. Why? Because from history you can learn things about people and about life that stay there forever. And these small lessons, they may not make you a lot of money, but they may make you learn how to treat your wife, or how to treat your husband, or how to raise your children, or how to not make life mistakes that you learn from other people.
So do you think that a person like me, if I was going to learn more about history, I might be influenced by the history and not make decisions that could make me more successful in terms of investing into technology? Or you think learning from the past will still be an advantage for making decisions in the future?
You know, it's very funny. So people have said that one who does not read history is doomed to repeat it, repeat the mistakes of history. I don't think this is true. Now, as a historian myself, and by the way, when I was in undergrad, I don't know if I told you this before, but I was very good at history to the point where they reignited an extinct degree at Carnegie Mellon. Yeah, and I didn't want to become a historian, but they were really the historical professors were really trying to get me to do a PhD in the field. They said you're really talented and stuff like that. As a historian, I tell you that I don't think that history is as powerful as people say it is for that purpose. In fact, I think it may weigh someone down. And it may make you less creative. So, for example, Albert Einstein was famous.
Yeah, because you're remembering what happened in the past, and you're like, that might be a mistake I might make, but if you don't make that mistake, it might not get you the outcome
that's one thing. But there's another thing, which is it may make you less creative. So, Albert Einstein, for example, was famous for saying that reading books to a certain degree makes you less creative. The more you think about how someone else thought of something, it gives you less of an opportunity to think for yourself. So, imagination and creativity are somewhat against that accumulation of knowledge. Also, as you said, you can look back in history and it can make, usually, this is a good point to bring up, people who look back in history a lot tend to be conservative. Because they're conservative because our brains are naturally designed to be biased, and this is one of my research, the research stuff I used to do is a field called decision making, or the heuristics and biases approach developed by Kahneman and Tversky. Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winner who was my advisor's advisor in graduate school, and who I met, who was very honored to, Israeli guy. We have a bias towards negative stuff, all of us, even the optimists. So if something bad happens, your brain remembers that more than when something good happens. So if you read history, you see how things could go wrong, and you notice that people who tend to like history also tend to be politically conservative. Political conservatism, true conservatism, is based on the element of wanting to maintain the good instead of wanting to take risks and hoping something will become better. Now, nowadays, liberalism is tied to socialism, which is a different kind of thing. That's capitalism versus socialism. But I'm talking about conservatism versus liberalism. At its core, you become more conservative the more you read history, because your brain is looking at, I assume, I speculate, because your brain sees the mistakes. So that's what I feel in that quote, when the man who doesn't read history is doomed to repeat his mistakes. It doesn't tell you the man who doesn't read history won't repeat the good parts.
That's true.
Because they're focused on the mistakes. Yeah.
So what, like for a person like me, doesn't read anything about history. I mean, I did read about history because, in France our program of history and geography are pretty intense. But what book do you recommend that I should read that would not cut down my creativity? Or like, which biography do you recommend for me to read?
Well, that's the point. First of all, I have to disagree. France does not have a good history.
We do have a good history program.
Do you want to argue about that? Because I know more about French history than you. Does it make sense?
No, that's different. I was taught French history. I don't remember it because I had zero interest. But we were taught like our program is very intense when it comes to history. In general. I like I said, I was sleeping in class and I was not doing anything, and I do not remember.
I met a lot of French students. I never found them to be good at history. They're good at geography.
Yeah, because
and
nobody
they're good at math.
have interest. Or you should start.
Well, they're past, so something's wrong. Look, guys, for those that don't know, French have probably the best. They probably have the best math schooling outside of East Asia, and maybe the best. I can't say best today. Maybe the best math schooling in the world. They have very good. They do real analysis in high school. A lot of them, which in the U.S. you only find real analysis taught which is the advanced form of details, the calculus, in what are called anchor schools, which there's like 1 or 2 anchor schools every 3 or so states in the US for gifted students. In France, they do that regularly, but I've never been impressed by any French people I know's historical knowledge. I know they have a lot of historical knowledge about France, but not about other parts of the world. I was never impressed at all. Yeah, they don't. But anyway, but you think so that's fine. Anyway, I'll leave you feeling good about it.
Let me put it something. But in our high school program.
Maybe
for
your
high school diploma.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the curriculum of high school degree in France. Anyway,
we just agree to disagree on this
exactly.
one, but you have a very good question, which is what will you get the most benefit with the least harm from? And the truth is, it is biographies. Just like you said, you're saying which biography. I mean, for every person, it's a different biography. It depends what you're trying to learn, right? But actually, we can get into that also a little bit. But biographies are the best way to learn life lessons from people that you never had the pleasure to know. People maybe greater than anybody you ever knew. If you're not fortunate to have been raised around someone with great productivity, great moral value, great impact, then read their life, the best biographies. Now, unfortunately, when you get to my stage in life, you've read probably the best biographies. You know, there's not every great historical figure has a biography, and most of them are crappy. And unfortunately, historical figures before 1850, they're not very detailed, their biographies. And before 1700, they're pretty crappy. So you can read before 1700, basically you can't learn much. But when you go, you can learn about the character, but you can't learn life lessons. But when you go into the very detailed ones, especially after, say, 1750 or so, you start to get a lot of letter correspondences that are kept. Now, a lot of these historical figures, unfortunately, burnt their letters before they died. A lot of them. Tremendous amount. Because they don't want people to read them. But the ones that didn't, you get a very interesting flavor of their life. And you start to learn things that happened with them. Like, you learn about mistakes that they made. You learn. Now, in your case, so for example, someone who's actually interested in technology specifically, you should be reading about the technologists. You know, you should be reading not that far back. You should start with the recent ones. You should be reading about Steve Jobs and people like that. Maybe there's a book on Wozniak. Maybe there's a book on probably you're more business oriented, so maybe Wozniak is not that useful for you. But you should be reading those guys' biographies. I bet there are some ones, and the biographies of modern day stuff often are very good. And guys, for those of you that don't know how to choose a book on Amazon, there are books that are not often rated, but if a book is rated above 4 stars, like 4, 4.5, or 5, it's probably a good read. There's another way to learn is, as you become better at reading books, or you buy more books and read them, you learn one thing. So if the book has recommendations from names, like in the pamphlet when you open it, or on the first page or on the back page, if it's from names that are authors of other books, this is a crappy book. Okay, because he doesn't want his book reviewed by real journalists or real book review companies. If the book is reviewed by academics at certain academic institutions, it's even worse book. Now, if it's reviewed by an author of another book who's a top author, for example, Nassim Taleb often reviews books. Usually he's good at reviewing them, but sometimes no, actually. But what you want to find is this. You want to find recommendations in the back and front. If you can't go on Amazon and read reviews or somewhere else, you want to find recommendations that are from like New York Times, which is a magazine. I really don't like the New York Times, but they do make good reviews. Reviews from top newspapers or journals, and then if they're very good reviews, they even say who reviewed it at that place, because sometimes there will be very top reviewers, harsh reviewers that will say good things. So if you see a bunch of names of authors or of professors, that leave that book aside usually. Another thing, don't ever read books on the Pulitzer Prize list of nonfiction. Those books are very politically driven. They're really bad books, really bad. I mean, I got lost for a while trying to read those books. They're the worst rating company. But the National Book Award and some other book companies are great to find. And what I would do, as I said, I'm tired of talking so much, but read biographies. In your case, if you're interested in technology, recent ones. If you're not a person interested in technology, but you just want to learn about life, read biographies of people in the last 200 years. So you can go, you can read about all kinds of personalities in that age. You can read about mathematicians, about scientists, about artists, about if you're interested in whatever you're interested in, read that, and you'll be able to live like you lived 100 lives in your own life. That's what the biographies give you the ability to do. You get to live Some people walk around, they don't read. They're living their life once and they'll never live it again. Some people like me, they're doing that, but they have no memory, so they're living life twice. But there are other people, like me also, who have read tons of biographies. So I live with the wisdom of the great historical people that I read about, and even not the great ones. I read biographies sometimes that are just excellent biographies.
I do.
So I get to learn about all these people's lives, and in my own life, I get to live with their wisdom on a daily basis.
So what's your favorite book?
My favorite book?
Nobody ever asked you that, huh?
That's a hard question. Oh my God.
If you had to pick one book, if you were going to an island, you have to pick one book.
My
Which
favorite,
one would you
you're talking about if I'm going to an island, it'll be Tolstoy. I'm actually not a fan of fiction in general, but War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy is my favorite book. But if you're going to get an island, you got to get a fiction book because you got to be able to reread it a few times. But there are other. I have like maybe 100 favorite books. But Leo Tolstoy's book is probably up there somewhere. Yeah. You can't see it on camera anyway. Yeah. But probably that. Maybe Dostoevsky. No, but it'll be Leo Tolstoy. And if you guys haven't read War and Peace, read Leo Tolstoy. He was a great man, brilliant cultural analyst and social analyst. And even just to read his Wikipedia page, just learn about him. He's a very interesting character.
All right.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.